Welcome everyone to Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici's webinar on the 2021 tax filing season and tax-related benefits. We will begin shortly. The Congresswoman will start by sharing opening remarks, and then we will have brief introductions from Cynthia Garcia, Senior Stakeholder Relationship Manager with the IRS Office of Stakeholder Partnership, Education, and Communications. And then Cody Trudell, with the newly created Office of Taxpayer Advocate within the Oregon Department of Revenue, will provide a presentation regarding the resources and information the office provides. Then Suzanne and our guests look forward to answering the questions that you guys have all submitted. A reminder that this webinar will be recorded. Hundreds of constituents have reached out to the Congresswoman regarding tax-related questions, and the Congresswoman is hoping that this event will be an additional resources for those constituents. Congresswoman, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I want to thank my staff, especially Brenda Alvarado and others on my staff who have been so helpful in getting this set up. I know it's been a challenging couple of years for individuals, for families, for small businesses, all of whom have faced monumental challenges, especially because of the pandemic. And in Congress, I've supported and helped to lead efforts to get needed relief to those who need assistance through the American Rescue Plan. But there have been so many communities and people affected by the pandemic. The bill that passed about a year ago, the American Rescue Plan, President Biden signed right away. It included another round of economic impact payments. And I've heard from many Oregonians that these stimulus checks really were a lifeline. I spoke with a retired Portland resident named Dean, and he told us that the payment was helping him cover essentials like rent, taking his car to the shop. The American Rescue Plan also dramatically improved the earned income tax credit for young and older workers, also nearly tripled the value of the credit for workers without children, and expanded eligibility to more than 17 million workers. And importantly, in that bill was the president's enhanced child tax credit, which I strongly supported. That provided nearly 93,000 families in Northwest Oregon with about $219 million to help them afford basic needs. Based on the data from the Census Bureau, the child tax credit has significantly reduced child poverty, in fact, by an estimated 30%, and across the country lifted more than 3.7 million children out of poverty. Moms like Amanda in Newburgh, who used these funds to help pay for childcare so they could work. Others have used the resources for food, utility bills, and other basic needs. The benefits made a difference for individuals, to cut taxes for families, but unfortunately the child tax credit expansion was temporary, and I'm continuing to fight to make it permanent, to continue lifting children out of poverty. So this is my second time hosting a tax webinar during the pandemic, and I understand how stressful tax season can be, even without a pandemic, and especially when tax benefits are a fundamental part of the social safety net for so many. I hope this webinar today will be a resource and provide answers to your questions. And we're very grateful today that we have two experts who are here to answer your questions about this tax season. And Brenda mentioned them. We have Cynthia Garcia from the IRS, connecting taxpayers to tax preparation services, and Cody Trudell from the Oregon Department of Revenue, advocating for taxpayers with state tax issues. So throughout the webinar today, Cynthia, Cody, and I will answer questions you submitted online when you signed up. Right now, I want to note that the IRS is facing an unprecedented challenge of providing these additional tax benefits while also transitioning to in-person work. The webinar today is designed to help provide tips and answer your questions so you can access tax benefits as quickly and easily as possible to meet your needs. So thank you, Cynthia Garcia and Cody Trudell, for joining us today and providing your expertise. Additionally, please contact my office at any time for information or help with a federal agency. We don't just help with tax issues, with veterans benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, immigration issues. My office is available to help. You can reach us at 503-469-6010. So Brenda's going to take over and introduce Cynthia and Cody, and then we'll start answering your questions.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And now I will introduce Cynthia Garcia with the IRS.
Hi, Brenda. Thank you. So as Brenda mentioned, my name is Cynthia Garcia. I am a Senior Stakeholder Relationship Manager in the SPEC unit, and that stands for Stakeholder Partnership, Education, and Communication. And our main focus is to partner with agencies throughout the community, and together we put on and we run free tax preparation sites throughout the country and, of course, throughout Oregon. We have two programs. The first one is called VITA, which stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. And the second one is called TCE, which stands for Tax Counseling for the Elderly. And the tax preparation sites are run by IRS trained and certified volunteers. So taxpayers who meet the assistance criteria can visit one of the free preparation sites during filing season and get help getting their taxes prepared. In the first district and just generally in the Portland metropolitan area, our largest partners are Metropolitan Family Service, Cash Oregon, and AARP Tax Aid as well. And we also work with many outreach partners like Congresswoman Bonamici's office to share general information about tax topics, and that is true throughout the year. And we do this by holding events like this one or sharing IRS prepared media about those tax topics through our partners' newsletters, emails, their social media, things like that. And so we're always welcoming new partnerships from the community. So that's a little bit about me and the agency or the unit that I work for. And I'm happy to be here this afternoon.
Thank you, Cynthia. And now we have Cody Trudell, and Cody has a presentation. So just give us a moment while we put that live. Thank you. And Cody, you can start whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you so very much for having me today. I am Cody Trudell, she, her pronouns, and I am Oregon's first taxpayer advocate. So today I'm going to share with you first some helpful tax tips, especially as an Oregonian, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about my new office and what we do. Next slide, please. So as I said, we're going to start with some tax tips. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to be prepared. We're going to talk about the ever popular kicker credit here in Oregon, child tax credits, and also some resources available for help. And then we will talk about my new office and what we're here to do for you. Next slide, please. So if you haven't started your taxes yet and you're going to be one of those people that's going to cut it close, or you're looking to hit it right in the next deadline in about a month here, the first thing that we would like to tell you is just there are things you can do to help make it a little quicker and easier, and starting by getting your stuff together ahead of time. One big thing that we offer and really suggest and recommend is that Revenue Online through the Department of Revenue is a great system. So if you could go on and log into that and get that set up ahead of time, then you'll be able to navigate and familiarize yourself with the process and get your filing in quickly as the deadline nears. If you have your W-2s already, that's great. If not, make sure you got those. Start reaching out to the people you need to gather those, or your 1099s. That's something else that we advise. Next slide, please. So yes, like I said, the ever popular kicker credit, as we like to call it, if you filed your 2020 tax return and you had taxes due before your credit, you are eligible for the kicker credit. The kicker will be something that is just automatically taken into account when you file your 2021 tax return. So you have to file your 2021 tax return to be eligible for that kicker. It's paid out of the tax credit, and it increases your refund, or it lowers the amount you owe. So this isn't like in the past where you would sometimes get that mail in the check if you had a kicker coming back. So this is why it's ever more important for you to file. You might be getting some money back. Next slide, please. And child tax credit is a big topic this year. So our advice to you is to make sure you know what that amount was if you received any advanced child tax credit payments. And then you can compare the advance payments you received in 2021 with the amount of the child tax credit you can properly claim on your 2021 federal tax return when you go to do so. Next slide, please. And something that we cannot emphasize enough that we found is probably the best strategy for getting your refund quicker to making sure that you get everything in on time is to e-file. So it's the fastest way to get your refund. We know that on average, taxpayers who e-file their returns and request their refund via direct deposit, if you can, you receive your refund sooner than those who file on paper returns and request paper refund checks. Next slide, please. So some additional resources for you. I can't tell you enough how much you'll find on our website, more than I could definitely cover here today, but one thing you will find is a tax booklet. You can download that, or you can even print it and take it with you or share it with somebody who maybe doesn't have access. And that you can find, of course, at www.oregon.gov/DOR/forms. It's a really great tool and resource there. You can also order copies of your past returns, letters, correspondence, going all the way back from 2015 to present day through your Revenue Online account. So again, another great reason why you want to get that Revenue Online account squared away and ready to go. And as Cynthia mentioned, there's a lot of great resources on the IRS webpage, and they provide a lot of great things as well as our website as well. Next slide, please. And there's no surprise, taxes are a really complicated thing and a really difficult thing. So if you need that professional help, we want to make sure that you know where to find that as well. So IRS has a great resource for those tax centers and other opportunities on their website at www.irs.gov. But if you were really interested in Oregon-specific tax practitioners, please take a look at the link that's here in the slide, which I believe will be sent to you as well once the show is over. But the Oregon Board of Taxpayer Practitioners, we can go to that link and you can get a license list for other professionals to help you with. Next slide, please. And definitely to piggyback off of what Cynthia shared, there is free or low cost assistance available for those of Oregonians that are eligible if you're seeking help with your taxes, whether it's Oregon or IRS related. If you meet a certain benchmark of criteria, then you could possibly get all of your professional needs met for free. Some of those great programs I'd encourage you to check out is AARP, Cash Oregon, United Way. And again, you can go to our website at the Oregon Department of Revenue to find a full list of those services and where they're operating and how to access them this year. They do get very busy, but I would still highly encourage you to check it out. You never know, they might be able to squeeze you in and get you what you need. And next slide. So the Taxpayer Advocate Office is a really exciting new program. It passed legislation last year in 2021. This is something that a lot of states have. It's also modeled after the IRS's National Taxpayer Advocate. And the office was launched in January of this year. I have been appointed as the first Taxpayer Advocate of Oregon. So we're not even 3 months in, but we have successfully helped over 100 Oregonians already. And primarily what we're there to do is to be the voice of the taxpayer and also a resource for the taxpayer when it comes to Oregon taxpayer needs. Next slide, please. So what do? We identify issues or barriers that prevent equitable and fair tax collection. We serve those taxpayers with tax-related problems when they can't resolve them through the normal, ordinary Department of Revenue channels. So I just want to really emphasize, please still do your normal tax Q&A, do your normal filing process, work with auditors, collectors, anybody that's reaching out to you through the Department of Revenue, please continue to work with them. We are just meant to be there if you hit a roadblock and you can't go any further. So we also are there to help identify larger systemic issues. That means that this is something that is impacting more than one taxpayer. So if somebody thinks a certain practice of the department maybe is infringing on somebody's rights or ability to comply with tax law, please let us know and we can start looking into that. We do also have a mechanism that was afforded to us in the statute to allow for individual orders to be issued through my office should any Department of Revenue agent or staff member feel that they can't comply. Maybe the law just simply doesn't allow it. I can intervene to help push that along. And then last but not least, what I think I have identified as a really important piece of Oregon and what's going to make our Taxpayer Advocate Office very unique is we are very proactively connecting with underserved populations. We are working and engaging with local communities to make sure taxpayer needs in those environments are best served. Next slide, please. So how can you reach us? We do have a bilingual staff person, and then we have one other staff member in addition to myself. So I say we are a small but very mighty team. We pride ourselves on being responsive and quick, at least to whatever request you have. We may not be able to solve all the problems or issues, but we will certainly do our best to be responsive. So call us. You can also find us through the Department of Revenue's website. We're on the main page. You can also just directly email us at taxpayer.advocate@dor.oregon.gov. And next slide, please. That will do it. So thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Cody. That was a great presentation. And now Brenda is going to sort of facilitate the questions. We have several questions that came in from people in Northwest Oregon. So Brenda, let's get started on those right away.
Wonderful. So our first question today is from Elizabeth from St. Helens. Do I have to pay income tax on unemployment benefits received in 2021 through the CARES Act? I think that goes to Cynthia.
Yes, I can take that question. So per the current legislation, all unemployment benefits received in 2021 are fully taxable. It was the American Rescue Plan that was passed in 2021 that did affect the taxability of unemployment benefits, but it applied retroactively to the tax year of 2020. So for the tax year of 2020, a taxpayer can exclude up to $10,200 of unemployment benefits as long as your modified adjusted gross income is less than $150,000. So what this meant is that the taxpayer did not have to pay taxes out of the first $10,200 of unemployment that they received. The exclusion was per person. So that means that a couple married filing jointly could exclude up to $20,400 on their 2020 tax return. But like I said, the exception applied for only the tax year of 2020. So as of the current legislation for 2021, yes, we're back to full taxation for unemployment benefits.
Thank you, Cynthia. Our next question comes from Eileen from Portland, who asks, what if I paid my taxes before the unemployment exception was passed? How do I get that refund? How do I get refunded that amount? Will it be credited to my next tax return or as a separate check? Okay. I think that's still yours, Cynthia.
It's still mine, yes. And I believe we're still talking about that unemployment benefit exclusion for 2020. So for those that have not filed their 2020 tax return and qualify the exclusion, they're basically going to subtract out $10,200 from their unemployment when they file a tax return. And this is done on a calculation on Schedule 1 of the federal tax return. For those taxpayers that use a tax preparation software, the software itself will walk you through, answering the pertinent questions and then doing the calculation on your tax return. For those that have already filed their tax return for 2020 and did not take the exclusion but were eligible, then what would happen is that the IRS would or should have by now completed an adjustment on the tax return to account for the unemployment exclusion. So there's no need to file an amended return, a Form 1040X in this situation, assuming there's no other reason to need to correct or amend the tax return. And the IRS began doing those recalculations in May of 2021, so of last year. And if other non-refundable credits or refundable credits were affected by the adjustment for the unemployment exception, then the IRS should have adjusted those as well. And any resulting tax overpayment, so a refund, would then be issued separately, and that would go either directly deposited or via a paper check. Once the adjustments are done by the IRS, then they will also issue a letter to the taxpayer explaining and outlining what the changes were. And that should definitely be kept by the taxpayer as part of their tax record keeping. And the IRS really does have an excellent FAQ page on the irs.gov website. And I will provide that link in the follow-up email to this town hall meeting. I'll send that out.
Thank you, Cynthia. And the next question is from Robert and Hammond, who asks, do Social Security recipients have to pay taxes on stimulus checks?
Okay, so what we refer to commonly as stimulus checks is called an economic impact payment. So you'll hear me use those terms interchangeably. But the economic impact payments are actually advance payments of a special credit, and that credit is called the recovery rebate credit. So because the economic impact payments are just advances of that credit, the payments are not typical income, so therefore they are not taxable. So nobody is required to pay taxes on those funds. But I think if this question is more about whether someone should file a tax return, given that they are not typically required to, because their income, whether it's Social Security or otherwise, or other sources of income, is below the filing threshold, and the only difference is that they've received economic impact payments, then I would say that they may want to consider filing a federal tax return. And the reason for this is that in the process of reconciling the recovery rebate credit, in other words, comparing what they received via their economic impact payments versus what they're eligible for per the credit, that may actually generate an additional refund. And of course, you don't want to leave your refund on the table. So I would recommend spending some time and figuring if what you received via the economic impact payments is the amount that you are eligible for. And if it was less, then to go ahead and file a tax return to claim that difference. I will also send out a link to a tool that the IRS has online that taxpayers can answer questions, and it'll help you determine whether or not you should file a return or consider filing a return for this filing season.
Wonderful, thank you. The next question is from Sui from Sheridan. If someone did not file a 2020 taxes nor receive the economic impact payment last year, how do they get those funds? And I think that's still you, Cynthia.
Yes, absolutely. So the only way at this point to claim and receive the economic impact payments, which as I mentioned, were actually advance payments of the recovery rebate credit, is to file a tax return. So a taxpayer would just file their tax return as they would any other year and make sure and claim the recovery rebate credit if they are eligible. And what would have been their economic impact payment advances of that credit will just be included in the calculation of any refund that is due from those tax returns.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Ms. Savage from Forest Grove, who asked, what if I did file timely and still have not received my stimulus payments from 2020 and 2021?
Okay, yes, so there can be lots of reasons why payments may not have been issued, or maybe they were issued and just not received by our taxpayers. So the best way to really find out what has happened and to take action to fix it is to contact the IRS directly. And you can do that either by calling the toll-free number or by making an appointment and visiting the local taxpayer assistance center. And an IRS representative over the phone or even face-to-face can verify a taxpayer's identity, go ahead and get into their account and look at the account to figure out what the problem may be. And then of course, take steps to resolve it. Now, I know that it's been difficult to get a hold of the IRS, and taxpayers who have been unable to resolve their issues or get the assistance they need directly through the IRS, and who are under maybe hardship circumstances, they can qualify for assistance from the Federal Taxpayer Advocate Service, or what we call TAS, T-A-S. And TAS is an independent organization within the IRS, and they provide assistance to resolve issues when all other venues or attempts to resolve the issue have been unsuccessful. Every state has an office, and the Federal Taxpayer Advocate Service office is located here in Portland. And I will provide in the follow-up email as well, I'll provide a link to their general information about the service that they provide and their contact information as well. So if somebody has already tried to go through the IRS directly to resolve or figure out why they haven't received their economic impact payments, then maybe they can contact the TAS service and go that route.
Thank you. Next question is from Betty in Beaverton. She said, can you discuss penalty abatement, how to start the process and the eligibility? I work with transient individuals who are trying to get back on track with taxes, and the penalties for not filing is intimidating to start.
Yes, this is penalty abatement can be complicated, but luckily the IRS can help you with this as well. So the first point to make though is that penalties are only charged on tax returns that result in a balance owed to the IRS. So if a tax return is filed and it's a zero balance or it's a refund that was due to the taxpayer, penalties will not apply. So the first step is to file the tax return, and that way we know if any penalties will apply at all. So not filing a tax return because we know that a taxpayer can't pay the balance in full or because penalties might apply is actually detrimental. And this is because the failure to file penalty, which is a significant penalty, accrues from the original due date of the tax return until the tax return is filed. So of course, the longer you wait, the more penalty will assess. And the failure to pay penalty as well accrues from the original due date of the return until the balance is paid in full. So filing sooner rather than later, even if there's a penalty, will actually over the long run, minimize the amount of penalty that will be assessed to the account to begin with. So my first recommendation is that barring any other special circumstances, just make sure that the taxpayer files their tax returns as soon as possible. So if balances are owed to the IRS and penalties do apply, then the IRS offers several ways that they can taxpayer can qualify for penalty relief. And this is assuming that legislation hasn't already been passed that provides some kind of relief, because sometimes penalty won't be assessed if a law is passed prohibiting it. So assuming that's not the case, the first path is called reasonable cause. Basically, this means that the IRS will consider the situation surrounding or around the taxpayer that has caused them to file late or to be unable to pay their balance right away. And this is a pathway that may require the taxpayer to submit documentation of their circumstances to the IRS for consideration of penalty abatement or removal under this path. There's a second path. It's called administrative waiver and first-time penalty abatement. And basically this is if the taxpayer has had a history of compliance, which means that they've always filed their tax returns, paid any balance that they owed, generally has had no issues with their taxes, then they may be considered or granted a one-time penalty waiver. So it's kind of like an administrative freebie, so to speak, if the taxpayer has a history of compliance. So both of those pathways, whether it's reasonable cause based on the circumstance or the administrative waiver, you do need to contact the IRS directly. Once the assessments or once the balances have posted to a taxpayer's account, they will get a letter in the mail, and there will be a phone number on that letter. The taxpayer can call that phone number on the letter to request assistance with penalty abatement or removal. And they can also make an appointment at their local assistance center as well to talk to somebody face-to-face and get that ball rolling. Representatives, whether it's over the phone or in person, can sometimes grant the administrative waiver then and there if they're able to. If they are not able to, then they can at least open a case for penalty removal under the reasonable cause path. And they can help the taxpayer understand what documentation might be needed from them, where to send it, any letters that need to come along with it, all of that. So to kind of put this in a nice little bundle, first have the taxpayer file their tax returns. Secondly, contact the IRS directly when they receive their notices, and the IRS can walk them through the process of requesting penalty abatement.
Great, thank you, Cynthia. Our next question is from Amber from Warrenton, who asks, are unemployment benefits taxed on a state level too? That's Cody's question.
Yes, the quick answer is yes. Basically, a good rule of thumb is unless the Oregon legislature deems otherwise, anything that's taxable under federal law is also taxable under state law.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Maureen in Newburgh, who asks, is the kicker available for 2021? And how do I adjust the state taxes I pay when I know I will get an $800 kicker?
Yes, so the good news is if you filed in 2020 and you had any amount owing before all your credits were taken off, and you file again in 2021, you are eligible for the kicker. And as I mentioned previously, we no longer send a check out anymore. So basically through the filing of your tax, unless you choose to donate that kicker refund amount, the amount will just be taken off of whatever you owe, or you'll get a surplus refund.
Thank you, Cody. The next question is from Michael from Tigard. Is there a state penalty waiver for late filing or interest past due tax balances? If so, what are the requirements?
Yeah, so this is a little more lengthy and complicated answer. So I'm going to give you kind of some tools in a quick abbreviated version really quick here. But yes, the department may waive certain penalties under statutory guidelines for certain requirements that are met. So I really would encourage the best way to really sleuth through whether each situation would apply or not would be to go to that www.oregon.gov/DOR, which will be sent out as well. And from that homepage, you can go under programs right there, and then you will select individuals. And then under that, it will be an option for collections information. So you can also call the collections office specifically. So I'm going to give you that phone number right now, and we can send it out as well. But it is 503-945-8200. And then if you still are confused, or if you're like, Cody, I went to the website and I can't find it, or nobody's answering that phone number, definitely give my office a call. That's what we're here to do. We can get you immediate assistance right away.
Thank you, Cody. Our next question is from John from Portland, who asks, there are many free federal tax filing software systems. Are there any for filling out state taxes?
Yes, fortunately, Oregon uses pretty much the same ones that the federal IRS encourages people to use as well. So you can go to the main Department of Revenue website, and we have a whole section there where you can click through and see which free file programs we recommend and that you would also be eligible for as well.
Thank you for that. Next question is from Jordan from McMinnville. How does the state decide a payment plan, and where do I go if I cannot pay at the time of filing?
That is a great question. So Oregon has a taxpayer bill of rights, which is something that my office is really going to be spreading the news and the word on, and making sure people know you do have rights. And one of those rights is that you have the opportunity to see if you can pay your debt in installments or a payment plan. But there is certain criteria that would need to be met. And one of those is that the Department of Revenue needs to be sure that setting you up on a payment plan would mean that they would be likely to still collect on your debt. So that's a big thing that you want to make sure you can do before you try to do this. So The biggest thing that I would like you to take away is if you are looking to do a settlement plan, continue to make payments as much as possible, even if it's just a tiny amount, as much as you can. And then eventually you will get a notice. And once you get that notice, that triggers the ability for the department to begin working with you to set up a payment plan. So it's a billing notice that you would receive, and it would have contact information on how to proceed with that option. But again, as with everything else I've talked about today, we are more than happy in my office if you get that letter and you're confused, or you really want to talk to somebody directly before you start making payments. We can help facilitate and arrange that conversation for you.
Thank you, Cody. The next question is from James from Hillsborough, who asks, what is Congress doing to improve IRS customer service? I have not been able to get a hold of anyone at the IRS. And that's yours, Congresswoman.
That sounds like a question for me. And before I tackle that, I just want to again thank Cynthia and Cody for joining us and providing their expertise. And I know that there are some questions and in the chat and in the Q&A, staff will be capturing those. And if they aren't answered by the end of this, we'll be able to follow up. So James, thank you for that question. And thank you for Cynthia for recognizing that. That the issue that it has been difficult for some people to contact the IRS. I want to acknowledge that we have experts like Cynthia who are working on getting this valuable information to taxpayers. And I have heard from constituents how helpful the information is once they get it, even though it's difficult. It has been difficult to reach the IRS. We know, and I acknowledge that the IRS needs to better serve taxpayers and be responsive to their needs. But I also recognize and appreciate that the agency and its employees have been trying to reduce the backlog of unprocessed returns. The pandemic has been challenging in many ways, but as well as having the additional responsibilities like distributing the economic impact payments, the child tax credit payments. Those were all things that happened through the various coronavirus relief packages. So they've had the double challenge of having a lot of additional programs to administer as well as during the pandemic. So I support providing additional funding to support IRS improving customer service. In fact, Congress just sent a funding bill to the president with my support. It includes the largest increase in funding to the IRS since 2001. We expect that the president will be signing this any day now, if he didn't already sign it today. And as soon as that's signed, I know the work will begin in getting those resources out. I'm also advocating for the IRS to provide maximum flexibility to taxpayers right now, especially with that backlog of unprocessed returns and the high call volume that's made it difficult for people like James to get a hold of someone at the IRS. So we're working on it. Again, it's been a challenging time, but I do understand the frustration of trying to get in touch and not being able to do so. And I'm hoping that the webinar helps. And Cynthia's been very accessible here today. And I know she'll do everything she can to make sure that people get their questions answered.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next question is from David from Tigard. When are we restoring the SALT deduction that we lost and impacts many middle-class Oregonians?
David, I assume that's for me as well, Brenda. Yeah. Thank you so much for the question. And the SALT is the state and local taxes deduction. I know this has been affecting so many Oregonians, and it's unexpectedly raised taxes during the last couple of filing seasons for working families. And that's been really frustrating to me as well. I'm disappointed that when that Partisan Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed in 2017, it was kind of rushed through Congress in that session. And that cut taxes for wealthy corporations, lowered the corporate tax rate, but also raised taxes for many working families. And that's where this comes up. It also eliminated the full state and local tax deduction. And that's the SALT, SALT, state and local tax deduction. And instead of, it caps it at $10,000, which in Oregon can be really challenging. So capping that deduction for state and local taxes makes it harder for states like Oregon to fund education, transportation, infrastructure, public safety, affordable housing, and other services. So I am co-sponsoring a bill. It's HR 613 for those who like the numbers of the bills. It's called the SALT Deductibility Act, and that will repeal the restrictions that were put in place by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I know there are several other states across the country where this is a concern, and representatives are hearing from their constituents about it. Additionally, the Build Back Better Act, which I supported when it passed the House and we sent it over to the Senate, where it's still pending, that would have raised the cap on SALT deduction from $10,000 to $80,000. So that would have really solved the issue for many, many Oregonians. So I understand the cut has been challenging and harmful to many households and individuals in Oregon. I'll keep your input in mind as we review further changes to the tax code. But I hear you, David, and I've heard from others as well about the concern about that change in the SALT deduction.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And the last question goes to you. It comes from William from Portland. What chance is there that the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit will be extended/enhanced in light of obstruction?
Well, thank you, William, for the question. And it is challenging sometimes to make predictions in this business, but I do want you to know that addressing child poverty is really an essential part of our economic recovery and something that I care deeply about. I'm on the Education and Labor Committee, where we do work on early childhood issues. And the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit provide important relief from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, as well as just affecting vulnerable Oregonians and Oregon families. So I have an Oregon Child Care Advisory Board, and I've had many direct conversations with parents. And I've heard again and again how much the child tax credit has helped a family meet their basic needs especially during this difficult year. I've long advocated for improving the child tax credit. I support the American Family Act that helped inform how Congress crafted relief efforts to best respond to the emergencies that households were facing across the country during the pandemic. I mentioned earlier the Build Back Better Act, which has passed the House with my support and is pending in the Senate. That bill includes provisions to extend the child tax credit, $3,000 per child under 18, $3,600 per child under 6, and the improved earned income tax credit for low-income workers of all ages. The Build Back Better Act addresses that, but again, it's still pending in the Senate. So this really has been the passage of the enhanced child tax credit really has been historic. We saw what happened when we provide that tax cut for working families, and we saw what a positive difference it made. And I heard from many constituents, a couple I mentioned, about how they were using the funds to help feed their family, pay rent, keep a roof over their house. And I also know that continuing the benefits will help with economic recovery. When we have parents, especially mothers, they want to return to the workforce, working seniors would have additional funds for unexpected costs. So it's a good investment, and we are going to continue working on it. My colleagues and I have seen those meaningful effects. We know that the legislation has made a difference for families, has brought financial relief, put food on the table, and I'm committed to renewing it. To me, it's a good investment when we address issues like child poverty. And the way I look at it is that we all do better when we all do better. So it's one of the many changes to the tax code that will really make it work better to help those who are still struggling and level the playing field.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And I think those are all the questions that we have for today. If you wanted to go ahead and say your closing remarks, just a reminder, folks will have a follow-up email with the resources and information we discussed today.
Well, thank you, Brenda, and thank you everyone for joining us. As Brenda mentioned, we will do a follow-up email, and we do know that there were a couple of issues that were put into the chat and the Q&A. We can follow up on those. If you did not get your question answered, please take a look at the resources that were provided. So thank you everyone for joining us, but thank you especially to Cynthia and Cody for your expertise. You'll be getting the email shortly with the information, but also the resources and links and everything. My office is available to help you. Again, if you're facing, if you have questions or have a challenge of facing trouble with federal agencies, not just with the taxes, but with, as I mentioned, Social Security, Medicare, immigration, veterans, and any federal issue, please call 503-469-6010. If we don't answer right away, please leave a message and we'll get back to you. You can also submit a request through my website, which is Bonamici, bonamici.house.gov. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to my staff, and really a special thanks to both Cynthia and Cody. We know how busy you are, especially at this time of year, but it's very helpful to have everyone here today. I saw somebody wanted me to repeat the number, and I'm going to do that one more time before we close. That's 503-469-6010. Thanks, everyone. Please stay safe and take care.